I have lived for 92 years on this earth, and for most of them, I was absolutely certain I knew how to eat. Not fancy, not complicated, just the way my mother taught me, the way everybody around me ate, the way that felt right and normal and good. White bread with every meal, sunflower oil in the pan every single morning, sweet rolls with my afternoon tea, because what is life without a little sweetness? I was not eating junk food. I was not eating fast food. I genuinely believed I was taking care of myself. And then, somewhere around the time I turned 85, things started slipping. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly, the way a pipe rusts. You don't see it happening, but one day, you turn the faucet and the water comes out brown. I would walk into a room and stand there, genuinely unsure why I had come. I would read a page of a book I loved and realize I had not retained a single sentence. My blood pressure, which had always been reasonable, started creeping up. I would climb the 14 steps to my apartment and arrive at the top feeling like I had climbed a mountain. My sleep became thin and brittle, like old paper. I went to my doctor. He was kind and thorough, and he ran his tests. And what came back told a story I had not expected. My B12 was low. My magnesium was low. My blood vessels, he said gently, were showing the kind of wear that accumulates over decades of a certain kind of eating. Not disease exactly, not catastrophe, just years and years of the wrong inputs, quietly doing their quiet damage. I drove home and I sat in my kitchen and I looked at everything in it, and I thought, I have been maintaining a body for 85 years, and I have been doing it with the wrong tools. I had good intentions and terrible information. And now I was going to have to learn, at 85 years old, how to rebuild the pipes. That is what I started calling it in my head, replacing the pipes, because that is what it felt like. Not a dramatic overhaul, not a young person's juice cleanse or some extreme diet, just finding the things that were corroded, pulling them out, one at a time, and putting something better in their place, one pipe at a time. Let me tell you what I threw out first, because this is the one that hurt the most: the white bread. I had eaten white bread my entire life. My mother baked it. I baked it. There is a smell in the world that is home to me, and it is the smell of white bread coming out of the oven. Throwing it out felt like a small betrayal of everyone I had ever loved. But here is what I learned. White bread, the soft, fluffy, beautiful kind, is made from flour that has been stripped of almost everything useful. The bran is gone. The germ is gone. What is left digests so fast that it hits your blood like a wave. Your blood sugar spikes, your body floods with insulin, and then it crashes. And this matters for the brain, because the brain runs on stable, steady fuel. Those spikes and crashes over years and decades damage the tiny blood vessels that supply the brain, the same blood vessels that were showing wear on my scans. And there is something else. Refined flour actually interferes with how your body absorbs certain B vitamins, including B12. Not because it poisons you, but because it disrupts the delicate environment in your gut where B12 absorption happens. I had been eating something every single day for 85 years that was quietly, politely, making it harder for my body to hold on to one of the nutrients my brain needs most. I replaced it with whole grain bread. Real whole grain, where you can see and feel the texture. Not the kind that just has wheat written on the bag in brown letters and is still somehow soft as a cloud. It took me about 3 weeks to stop missing the white bread. I will not lie to you and say it was easy, but I stopped missing it. The second thing I threw out was the sunflower oil. This one surprised me more than the bread, because sunflower oil always felt like the healthy choice. It is a vegetable oil. It is light. It does not feel heavy in the pan. My doctor had even recommended it over butter years ago. So I was confused, and then I was a little angry. And I wonder if you have ever had that feeling of doing the right thing for decades and finding out the information was simply wrong. Here is the problem with sunflower oil, and with most of the common vegetable oils we were told to cook with. They are extremely high in something called omega-6 fatty acids. Your body needs some omega-6, but when the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 gets out of balance, and for most Americans eating a modern diet, it is wildly out of balance, it creates a condition of chronic, low-grade inflammation throughout the body, in the blood vessels, in the brain. Inflammation is not always fire and swelling. Sometimes it is just a low hum, a constant friction that wears things down over years. And that friction in the blood vessels leads to exactly the kind of arterial stiffness and plaque buildup that raises blood pressure and reduces the flow of oxygen and nutrients to the brain. I replaced the sunflower oil with olive oil for most cooking and a little butter, real butter, for the things that need it. Not margarine, butter. Another thing I had avoided for years on bad advice, and I want the extra years I spent eating margarine back, but I suppose I cannot have them. The sweet rolls were third, my afternoon tea and my sweet rolls. This was my ritual, my rest, my reward for the day. Sitting down at 3 in the afternoon with my tea and something sweet. I did not eat enormous amounts of sugar. I was not drinking soda, but every single afternoon, without fail, I had those rolls. And I had not understood what they were doing. Refined sugar does two things that I now care about deeply. First, it depletes magnesium. When your body processes a large amount of sugar, it uses magnesium as part of that metabolic work. And if you are doing that every day, you are drawing down your magnesium stores consistently. Magnesium is involved in over 300 processes in the body, including the regulation of blood pressure, the function of muscle and nerve tissue, and the quality of sleep. Low magnesium means higher blood pressure, worse sleep, more anxiety, more muscle cramping. It also means that the blood vessels stay more contracted than they should, which is part of why blood pressure rises. I had been robbing myself of magnesium every afternoon at 3 o'clock for years, and thinking I was treating myself kindly. Second thing sugar does. It feeds a particular kind of bacterial environment in the gut that interferes with B12 absorption. B12 is not absorbed like most nutrients. It requires a very specific process involving something called intrinsic factor, produced in the stomach, and it requires a healthy gut environment to complete the journey. Sugar, eaten regularly, tips that environment in the wrong direction. Not overnight, slowly, over years. Over 85 years, it turns out, quite significantly. I still have my afternoon tea. I replace the sweet rolls with a small handful of walnuts, and sometimes a square or two of dark chocolate, real dark chocolate, 70% cacao or higher. This felt like a punishment for about 2 weeks, and then it started feeling like a choice I was proud of. The tea remains. Some things are not negotiable. Now, the one that took me longest to accept: low-fat dairy. I had been eating low-fat yogurt and low-fat milk for probably 25 years, since the whole country seemed to agree that fat in dairy was the enemy. I had been diligent about it, and it turns out that removing the fat from dairy does something that the packaging does not mention. It removes the fat-soluble vitamins that help your body absorb what is left. Dairy is a source of several B vitamins, but B12 in particular requires fat to be absorbed properly. Low-fat dairy delivers less B12 than full-fat dairy, and it delivers it in a form your body handles less efficiently. I had been eating yogurt every morning for a quarter century, thinking I was doing something good for my bones and my gut, and the version I was eating was significantly less useful than the version I had been avoiding. I switched to full-fat yogurt, plain, not sweetened. I add a little honey or some berries. The difference in how it tastes is remarkable. I do not know why I waited so long. There is one more thing I threw out, and it is not a food. It is coffee, specifically coffee in the morning before eating. I am a coffee drinker. I have been a coffee drinker since I was a young woman, and I am not giving up coffee. I want to be very clear about that. But I used to drink my first cup, sometimes my second, before I had eaten anything. Black coffee on an empty stomach raises cortisol, which over time affects how efficiently your gut absorbs B12 and certain minerals, including magnesium. Coffee also has a mild chelating effect on some minerals. It binds to them and carries them out before your body has a chance to use them. Drinking coffee after a meal reduces this effect significantly. A small change, almost embarrassingly small. But I moved my first cup of coffee to after breakfast, and I kept that habit. Now I want to tell you what happened, because I think this is what you are actually waiting to hear. And I understand that. I would want to know too. The first thing I noticed was my sleep. Within about 6 weeks of making these changes, I started sleeping through the night in a way I had not done in years. Not perfectly, not like a young person, but solidly. I would lie down and I would sleep. And I would wake up feeling like I had actually rested rather than just passed time in the dark. Magnesium, it turns out, is deeply involved in the regulation of sleep. When your levels are adequate, your nervous system can actually quiet down at night. I had not known my nervous system was noisy. I had just thought I was an old woman who did not sleep well, because old women do not sleep well. That is not entirely wrong. But some of what I was calling age was actually deficiency. The second thing was my blood pressure. After 4 months, it had dropped enough that my doctor reduced one of my medications. I want to be careful here because I am not a doctor and I am not telling you to change your medications based on what I changed in my kitchen. But I am telling you what happened to me. And what happened to me was that reducing the inflammation, improving my magnesium, and removing the daily blood sugar spikes added up to a measurable, documented change in my cardiovascular health. My doctor was pleased. He was also somewhat puzzled because he had not expected dietary changes at 85 to move the numbers that much. I told him I had been replacing the pipes. The third thing was the stairs, the 14 stairs to my apartment. I still count them because I counted them for years as a measure of how my body was doing. At my worst, I arrived at the top breathing hard enough that I had to stand still for a minute before I could speak. Now I arrive, and I am breathing a little harder than I was at the bottom, as a person who has climbed stairs should be. But I can speak immediately. I can keep walking. My lungs feel like they belong to a person who is managing her life rather than surviving it. And the memory. This is the one I held my breath about, because memory feels the most personal, the most frightening to lose. I am not going to tell you I have the memory of a 40-year-old. I do not. I am 92, and some things take longer to retrieve than they used to, and some things slip away, and I have made my peace with that as part of being alive this long. But the fog, the specific, strange fog, where I would walk into a room and feel genuinely confused, or read a sentence and find nothing sticking, that has improved, noticeably. Conversations feel more present. I find words more easily than I did 5 years ago, which is not the direction that is supposed to happen, and I find that quietly amazing. I think about all the years I was doing what I thought was right, and I try not to feel too much about them, because that kind of regret is not productive, and I am 92, and I do not have time for it. But I do think about the people I love who are younger than I am, my grandchildren, their spouses, people in their 40s and 50s who are eating the way I ate, who believe what I believed, who think that white bread and low-fat yogurt and sunflower oil and a sweet roll in the afternoon are reasonable, even virtuous choices. I want to hand them this information the way I would hand someone a map before they got lost, rather than after. The pipes, once they are badly enough corroded, are harder to replace. I know that because I have been doing it at 85 and 86 and 87 and now at 92. And the work gets done, but it takes longer and requires more patience than it would have at 50. I wonder sometimes what my numbers would look like now if I had started at 60. I wonder if I would even bother counting the stairs. What I know is that the body is more responsive than I expected it to be. It wants to work. It wants to function and repair and maintain itself. What I had been doing, without knowing it, was handing it the wrong materials for the job. Refined flour, inflammatory oils, sugar that stripped its minerals, low-fat products that removed the very compounds needed for absorption. The body was trying to maintain a building, and I kept sending it the wrong grade of pipe. I replaced them, one at a time. Whole grains instead of white, olive oil and butter instead of vegetable oil, full-fat dairy instead of the stripped version, fewer concentrated sweets, more nuts and dark chocolate, and things that actually carry nutrients instead of just taste. Coffee after breakfast instead of before. Small changes, not dramatic ones. Nothing that required me to stop recognizing my own kitchen. And at 92, on a morning when I climbed those 14 stairs and arrived at the top without drama and made my tea and sat down with my walnuts and my dark chocolate and could remember exactly why I had walked into the kitchen in the first place, I thought, this is what it feels like to have done the work. Late. Later than I should have, but done. I am curious whether any of this sounds familiar to you. Whether you have that one food in your kitchen that you have always thought of as the safe choice, the healthy choice, the one your mother swore by, and whether reading this plants the smallest seed of doubt. I do not know what is in your kitchen. I only know what was in mine for 85 years, and what I learned to see differently. Maybe you are further along than I was. Maybe you started earlier and made better choices, and your pipes are in fine shape. Or maybe you, like me, have been maintaining something important with the wrong materials and just have not gotten the scan results yet that tell you so. Either way, I am 92 and I am still here, still climbing my stairs, still thinking clearly enough to tell you this story. That, at my age, is not nothing. That, at my age, is everything.